Welcome back to the Ready Room Podcast. I am your host, Josh, and today we're talking about services you should offer as a gunsmith. Please enjoy. All right, I told you guys I'd be doing one episode per month, and I'm holding true to my promise 2 months in a row now. Really excited for this one. This is actually one of the few where I do not have a script ready. It's a little unusual for me, but I had the idea for this one. I believe someone actually sent me a similar idea, which I still want to do in its own episode, but this one is a little bit different than what they sent. Today is, what services should you offer as a general gunsmith? We're not going to go over specializations because when you're specializing in a specific area of gunsmithing, your task is to get as good as you possibly can at that specialization, and you're going to make your money that way. This advice is more for people looking to offer general gunsmithing services and make a little bit of money doing it. All right, before we dive into this, though, I want to make sure I recommend you guys check out the social media. Instagram is TBR Gunworks. Facebook is TBR Gunworks. On YouTube, we're actually making videos now and shorts. So if you want to catch that, the same shorts that go on YouTube go on Instagram. They just do a little better on YouTube. They also go on Rumble. Everything goes on Rumble. The podcast, all of my videos and shorts go on Rumble as well, but it does not perform nearly as good. So just want to let you guys know that if you're looking for that, make sure you go find it, TBR Gunworks, and leave a review for the podcast if you don't mind. That is the best way to show support, is leaving a review and sharing it to your friends. The more people you bring into the mix, the more the algorithm will push the podcast, and the more people I can help, the more ideas we get for new podcast episodes, and the more reason to keep doing this, okay? It doesn't make sense to do the podcast if it's not helping people. Like I said last time, the goal of the podcast is to help people. And this episode is one of those things where I'm trying to help people who are starting out with gunsmithing, or maybe already lightly established and want to expand services that they haven't looked at yet. And these are all pretty simple things, but it's just a way to help somebody without any, this doesn't help me at all. This is just for you guys. So I just wanted y'all to know that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the most basic that everyone should already be offering. But if you're thinking about not doing this, opening up your own shop or a gunsmithing area yet, you haven't opened it yet, but you're thinking about it, the number one thing you need to make sure you offer is cleanings, because you wouldn't believe how big of a percentage cleanings make on how many services you do. Some places break it down into deep cleans and basic cleans. I myself don't do that, and the reason is I don't like to say I cleaned a firearm, and if you actually go in there and take every single little part out of there, it's not actually cleaned all the way through. I take pretty good pride in my cleanings, so that when a customer gets the gun back and it was there for, let's say, replacing 2 broken parts and a cleaning, well, they're going to pay a little more for my cleanings, but when they get it back, no matter what they take off or take apart, they're not going to find any grime, any dirt, any carbon. It's all going to be taken off. I charge a flat rate for cleanings because, like I said, I don't do basic cleanings or deep cleans. All of my cleanings are deep cleans. So if you want me to clean it, you're going to pay for it. And that includes removing rust. That includes taking out the carbon. That includes taking out every single part and getting every bit of grime that is around that part. This is really important because many, many people do not feel like cleaning their guns. One of my good buddies will bring me his firearm after it has had 10 to 15,000 rounds through it without a single cleaning. And he'll do that on a regular basis, and it always baffles me how he could do that. But that's just how some people are. Some people are not into the maintenance side whatsoever. Just like some people refuse to have a shop change their oil, some people refuse to let other people clean their guns. I mean, I would never pay someone to clean my firearm, even before I was a gunsmith, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who don't value that cleaning as worth their time. They'd rather pay someone to do it. They value their time more than the money they spend to do the job. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just different strokes for different folks. and you're going to get a lot of cleaning jobs. I think a lot of you will be surprised at how big of a percentage the cleaning jobs will make up of your everyday work. And it's a good thing too, because it will allow you to break up your time based on the money you need to make. And this is something that you might look into, and most blue collar people running their own shop will look at. There is a daily cost of running a business, right? If you break down all of your costs of running your business and break it into a day amount, right? So if I'm spending $3,000 a month to run the business, which, I mean, let's hope you're not, unless you're really successful and very large, and you break that into 30 days, well, you get a daily amount that you need to make to break even, much less make a profit, right? So a lot of people will try, and I'm one of those people, I will try to start the day with as many of the easy jobs I can knock out and guarantee that money is done. So you try to meet your daily cost of running the business before lunch, right? Every single day. And that means everything after lunch is profit. Okay. And this is an interesting way to break it down. Some guys do certain days where, like, the first 2 days of the week are these two services, and then Fridays are bluing, or whatever. So having these small jobs that are going to help pay the bills because they're more frequent, they're higher in volume, but they're lower in cost. Those are going to help you pay your bills. And these are things you need to look at, because they're not the cool jobs. They're not the exciting jobs. You rarely see me post anything online that is about a cleaning, because I do them every day, and they're boring, but they're the ones that help pay the bills. So cleanings are really important, guys. They're a pretty low cost job as well when it comes to your investment. Now, your time is invested in it, and if you're really slow at cleaning, then it may not be profitable for you. If you're spending 3 hours to clean a Ruger 1022, well, you're losing money. But if you're spending 1 hour doing a super deep clean on a Browning A5 from the first couple years it was made and it hasn't been cleaned since then, that's not a bad ratio, right? You can make some money doing cleanings, especially if, like I said, you break your days down into how much I need to make per day, how soon can I make that money each day during the day, and then what can I do after that money amount is made for the day to make more money, right? So, for example, I like to do all the easy jobs in the mornings, and then in the evening, or the afternoons and the evenings, work on the stuff that is more of a long-term project, like refinish jobs. That's just typically how I do things, and everyone's different. Everyone's got their own style or method that makes sense to them. This one just makes sense to me. You're gonna have to find that yourself. The next service I think is actually really important to do is the pin and weld for AR-15s or any rifle where you're looking to take a 14.5 inch barrel or 13.7 inch barrel or 13.9 and pin and weld a muzzle device to make it the legal 16 inches. This has become extremely popular in the past decade. Even more in the past 2 or 3 years, it's picked up a lot. And lots of people are really bad at this service. A lot of people mess up this job. We're going to go into why in a minute. But this is a job that has a very low cost and high profit margin. So despite the fact that it's $60, if you break down every single part of the pin and weld and how much time it takes you, as long as you're not removing an old previous pin and weld, if you're doing this first, and this is the first one it's getting, it can all be done in 10 to 15 minutes. If you're good at it, you know what you're doing, you got the right tools for the job, 10 to 15 minutes, you can have a muzzle device installed, the hole drilled, the dimple into the threads, the surface is cleaned, the chamfer added to the hole, and then the pin and weld done. And I like to tell people, like, you could genuinely, as long as you prepped everything, you could, okay, let me back up a second. As long as all the extra parts are removed, the handguard's not there, and you're starting with a muzzle, right? You could do all the prepping and the pin and welds for 5 pin and welds in an hour. 6 probably. You'd probably do 6. You would just set up on the drill press to do all your holes. Boom, 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 boom. Hit them all after another. And then chamfer all of them one in a row. But bang, 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 bang. And then clean them out with denatured alcohol or acetone and an air compressor. Make sure all those surfaces are clean. You can cut all your pin material to the lengths you need, and then grind them to have a little bit of a taper on the end to fit in that dimple that you drilled into the threads of the muzzle. You could do all these in a method in a row, and once they're all prepped and all the pins are prepped and they're all set in there, you put one upper on your tool and on your bench and your vise, and you boom, weld, pull that one off, do the next one, rinse and repeat. You could do 5 or 6 pin and welds in an hour, and a good pin and weld that is done properly, and I mean properly, it's aesthetically pleasing and it will fit a suppressor. Okay. $60, $60 to $80, honestly, is what's fair. That's what people will pay. So even though it only took you 10 to 15 minutes, that's what a pin and weld is worth. I disagree with guys saying $40. Okay. Well, $40, why not $20? Why not 30? The whole 40 less than 60 thing, it doesn't make sense. The standard is the standard for a reason. It's much like mechanic jobs. Jobs pay what they pay, regardless of how quick you get them done, and that works both ways. If you get let's say there's a mechanic job, and the book standard says it should take you 8 hours, and it pays, I don't know, let's just say it pays $400. I mean, that's not a great ratio, but let's just say this 8 hour, okay, $600. But you get it done in 4, and you did it properly because you do this job all the time and you're really good at it. Well, you still get your $400. You don't charge the customer less because you got really good at it and did it faster. But this works both ways when you can say, well, the book says it should take me 8 hours, but it took me 12. You also don't get to charge the customer more. Just because you're slow at the job does not mean that you get to charge more for it, right? So the standard for pin and welds is between $60 and $80. Now that changes if you're removing an existing pin and weld muzzle device, because you have to drill the hole, drill the pin out, back the muzzle device off. Sometimes it's easier than others, it just depends. And I would say the standard for that is 120 to 140. And it depends. I mean, some shops are offering it for less and some shops are offering it for more. That's okay. There's a little bit of play there. I don't think you should pay $120 for a flat out pin and weld, but I also don't think you should pay $30. A lot of the times, guys, the customers aren't paying for time. They're paying for the knowledge and skill set you possess. If someone can do a job that takes you 4 hours, if they can do it in 2, they're still going to charge the same amount or even more because their skill set has gotten them there. They're that good. You get that good, and it saves you time. Mark Novak says, and I don't know the exact wording of this, but it's like the wise man spends money to save time. Yeah, because your time is your money, right? So there's the other guys that's like, well, some people spend time to save money. But in the gunsmithing industry, your time is your money. So sometimes making the jobs go by faster, but just as good, is worth the more expensive tools or the more expensive setups because you're cranking these jobs out faster. Now, that didn't perfectly relate to the way he says it and when he says it, but being efficient at getting these jobs turned around quickly will make you more money. And I'm not trying to say, you should be greedy and be charging customers arm and a leg. And I'm not saying that every single one of your jobs is going to have a super high profit margin. This is just one of those jobs where you can make money without an insane amount of effort as long as you're good at it. But your pin and welds had better look good. Now we're going to talk about why some people's pin and welds are really, really bad. Now, don't get me wrong. I've put out a not so pretty pin and weld. And to be honest with you, for about 3 or 4 months, I was having issues specifically with the Sons of Liberty Gunworks Nox muzzle device, which is one of the most popular ones. I was having the issue of the pin material that I was using that was working for Surefire muzzle devices and Knight's Armament muzzle devices wasn't seeming to work with the Sons muzzle devices. I don't know exactly which metals they were using. I don't know the metallurgy of their muzzle devices or which finish quality, if that made a difference. The issue I was having was specifically on the Sons of Liberty Gunworks muzzle devices. The muzzle device would melt before the pin would melt. So I was trying to chase I was trying to move this puddle into a constantly moving melting point. And this was not working out for us at all. So I had to take a step back. And don't get me wrong, every customer got clean pin and welds. I mean, they were bad from my standpoint. They were not perfect, and I have a very high standard for pin and welds. So I cleaned them up a lot I had to add a little bit of filler, and that's point number one we're going to talk about. After I get through this point, I guess. Once I clean them up, they got them, and I said, hey man, your next one's basically like a discount, because until I get this Sons of Liberty Gunworks thing figured out, what the issue is, why it's melting before other ones are melting, I'm not happy about it. And I got it figured out. I switched to a new pin material. We can talk about the specific pin material later, but I switched pin materials and immediately had a better go of things with the Sons muzzle devices. Like I said, I was having no issues with other muzzle devices. It was only Sons. So the new pin material is working really well. It has a lower melting point than the previous one did, but it's still a carbon steel based pin, so it's still going to meet the Rockwell hardness settings, and it's still going to be a good solid pin and weld that is visually there. So if there's unfortunately some stupid ATF agent checking it, then they can see that it's been pin and welded. They're not going to be able to torque it off with the required torque settings or required torque amount that they're talking about. It's still a pin that needs to be drilled out to remove the muzzle device without just gorillaing. I mean, you can remove pretty much any pin and weld muzzle device with torque. Like the ATF acts like, oh, because it's pin and welded, you can't torque it off. That's nonsense. You get a good enough vise, good enough wrench, and some elbow grease, you can drag those pins all the way through those threads. Like, just saying, I've seen it done. Anyways, why do people sometimes mess up pin and welds? There's two most common reasons. The first one is they're using a TIG and they're using the filler rod. You do not need filler rod to do a pin and weld. You need a pin that you will set in the hole that is going to go into the dimple that you've drilled into the threads, has the right height amount that you melt into the hole. You're melting the pin. You're going to hit it with the TIG gun until it melts. And then ideally, you figured out how to get the puddle to eventually, once it's done melting and you stop, be flush with the muzzle device. Now this is different muzzle device to muzzle device, and it's a little easier said than done on some muzzles or MDs where they have a shoulder immediately next to the hole. On those, I've considered drilling holes in different locations. But the task is to melt your pin as flush as possible with the diameter of the muzzle device where you're working, especially if it's an MD that's taking a suppressor. Now, if you're pin and welding a giant 4-port brake on a short-barreled Mosin Nagant, I don't think it really matters if the pin material is flush, okay? It doesn't really matter. But having it stick up a lot of the times interferes with most suppressors because a lot of these MDs are quick detach for suppressors. So they keep that in mind. The second reason a lot of people are messing up pin and welds is because they're using MIG guns. They're using MIG welding machines. That's a hard no. There is no way, I've never seen a way for you to do a pin and weld that is both aesthetically pleasing, clean, and flush with the hole, okay? Do not do pin and welds with a MIG gun. Get a TIG. You can get a very affordable and actually very decent quality for pin and welds TIG machine on Amazon for like $600, okay? You save up for that and you'll be doing $60 per pin and weld as long as you do it right. Find the right pin material, air hardening drill rod, specific ones, by the way. Don't just go wild. Do a bunch of practice because you can get different muzzle devices, drill holes in them, and I mean, it's kind of that's kind of pricey. Getting muzzle devices just to drill holes in them to do pin and welds on is kind of pricey. You can do it on if you find some good carbon steel pipe, you can drill holes in that and try different pin materials in that carbon steel pipe. Just don't do something super cheap and crappy like some Chinese pot metal pipe because it's not the same and it'll probably melt before, the pin material does. If you can find some good quality like tool steel level pipe to drill and try it out on, that's what I would do. do as many practices as you can. And once you get it dialed in and you have clean pinning welds, people are going to come for them, guys. I mean, I almost all my pinning welds are from out of state because they see them and go, that's a pretty good one. I'm going to pay for it. Because a lot of guys in their area just aren't up to the task of a good, clean pinning weld. And I'm not trying to take shots at anybody. I don't know why people continue to do bad pinning welds and have no problems putting that product out. They just keep doing it. And I feel bad saying this, and if you guys hear this, I'm sorry. But I have had like 6 or 7 customers, maybe 10 customers in the past like 3 to 4 months come to me and say the other shop in the area did this pin and weld. It's bad. Can you fix it? And I say yes. I don't hate them. I'm not trying to like steal their business, but they're putting it out. If they would just find a way to do better pin and welds, that wouldn't be the case. So, I mean, I wish them all the best. I hope they get it figured out and do better. That's all I can say. But I mean, I'm going to keep doing good pin and welds for anybody who wants it. So like I said, guys, that's $60 right there. That is, if you're efficient and you've got it kind of dialed in, 15 minutes. The longest an entire pin and weld should take you start to finish, not including taking parts off the firearm, remove the handguard. You know, you don't want to get that thing overly hot in an area if it's really close to the pin and weld, and it's also going to be in your way. Take the handguard off. So besides all the handguard and accessory removal time, the longest it should take you is 25 minutes. And that's if you're being super careful with everything and you don't have the best drill press. So you're doing, maybe you're using a hand drill to drill this hole. It doesn't take that long, right? And $60, and it's worth it. And your pin material is actually pretty affordable. If you can find it at the right price, you can do, I would honestly say I could do like 30 to 40 pin and welds out of one rod that I've got. Easily. And that rod was maybe $5 or $6. Yeah, I think so. And then there's shipping, but you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty affordable when it comes to what you have in it versus what you get back. And then the more you can do, the more you can save up, let's say 5 pin and welds for a Friday, do all of them on Friday. And then that Friday, just with pin and welds, just made you, I mean, what is that? Let's say you do 10 pin and welds on a Friday, that's $600. That's a really good Friday. Like, let's just be honest, guys. Okay, so pin and weld is a second service I think every gunsmith should offer as long as you're a general gunsmith. Remember, some guys are going to specialize, and if you're specializing in like gun making or wood finishing or just bluing, like this isn't for you. But I mean, especially, Mark Novak will not even work on AR-15s. It's not his thing, and that's fine. That means more customers for me, right? Mark is above my level in checkering. He's above my level in refinishing. He's phenomenal, and I'll keep doing AR-15 jobs for the guys who shoot all the time in AR-15s and, are that kind of customer. That's fine. Everyone's got their own little niche, guys. So the third service I think everyone should offer is, and it's kind of funny because I just talked about AR-15s, is AR-15 assembling. Now, I know some of you guys are laughing your heads off because why would people pay to have you build an AR-15? There's lots of reasons. Some AR-15s come from the factory, already built, falling apart. I'm going to throw Ruger under the bus for this one because I have seen 3 different complete Ruger AR-15s come from the factory with their parts loose. One was a muzzle device and 2 were loose gas blocks. It happens. Okay, that's quality control for you. But more and more, I'm seeing the high-end companies, and I don't want to throw names under the, but you know what? No, I will. I'm seeing LMTs and some Radians with issues lately. Now, this is not anything new. Okay, quality control is quality control. Some things slip through. I'm not shaming these companies. LMT still makes a good product. Radian still makes a good product, even though they won't return my phone calls, and I've left like 6 voicemails. So you can suck it, Radian. But that's just how QC works. So a lot of guys are just sending ARs to people to be looked over. Like, hey, will you go from this thing top to bottom to inspect it and make sure there's no major issues before I go take it to a match or a 3-day class, stuff like that. Which is fine, because if you're not someone who's like completely dived into this AR-15 world and know everything about what you're looking at and what to look for in, red flags or issues that are going to pop up in the future, you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know, guys. I said that back in the day in an older episode. You don't know what you don't know, and you can't know what you don't know until you know it. Okay, so we want these people who are coming to us for help on their AR-15s to have confidence in us. And what we'll do to give them that confidence is show them that we're doing the inspections or the building with the utmost attention to detail, right? I've started using pin gauge sets to check people's gas port diameters to make sure that this barrel has a gas port diameter that is advertised on the company's website. I use a bore camera to align their gas blocks to guarantee that their gas blocks are 100% aligned as opposed to eyeballing it and just, it looks straight enough and then locking it down. Especially when you're going to drill the barrel for a pin. I mean, that thing needs to be good the first time, because if it's not, you're buying that customer a new barrel. And then you're checking things such as the ejection pattern when it's all put together and you have a couple different ammo types. How is it ejecting? Is it overgassed? Is it undergassed? Check headspace. I mean, all these things you could check that the normal customer doesn't check when they throw an AR-15 together, even if they're throwing it together with really good parts. There are things called tolerance stacking, where just because all these parts are really, really good does not mean they're all going to interface together perfectly every time. Things slip through quality control. Feed ramps don't get blended sometimes. Gas ports get drilled crooked sometimes, by the way. You definitely should be checking for that. Gas blocks have a slightly out of spec inner diameter to fit over the journal, and you get gas leaking out of the AR-15. Like, the AR-15 is a phenomenal platform when it's working properly. But that means that the gun needs to be built properly. But this applies to any good firearm. Any firearm that is not built properly does not run as well. 1911s are a great example of this. I know every dude in the comment section is like, "Oh, we just talked about the 1911 platform and how it's outdated." Kind of. Okay. Double stack and single stack 1911s run like a dream when they're built properly. Go look at Joe Chambers Customs 1911s. They're like well-oiled Swiss clocks. They just run. But they need to be built properly. Just like, I'm not going to get into Glock. We had that conversation before. Some things are built to have wildly forgiving tolerances. AK platforms are like this. Glocks are like this. That's why you see some as soon as you start throwing aftermarket parts into Glocks, they start jamming up really bad. That's why. They work with their own tolerance standards. And as soon as some other companies' tolerance standards come in there and they start tolerance stacking, they have issues. I've only ever seen a few completely factory Glocks have serious malfunctions. The vast majority of the time, in fact, 99% of the time, it's limp wristing. But back to what we were talking about. A lot of customers will send me firearms or a box of parts, of AR-15 parts, saying, "Hey, would you please assemble this to the best specs you can possibly do, check everything, make sure everything's good, and send it back to me?" Well, the answer is yes. And I'm happy to provide that service, even though some guys are like, "Well, it's like building Legos. It's really, really easy." Yeah, just throwing the parts together is easy, but not everyone who's throwing it together in their mama's basement is checking for all these tolerances and all these issues that I'm checking for. And that's what the customer's paying for. They're not just paying for me to throw the parts together that they themselves know they could throw together. They want to make sure this gun's going to run properly, whether it's a rifle that they're hoping to at some point put into service of defending their own life, right? I'm not saying they're hoping for that situation. I'm saying they're hoping for this rifle to be the one they can depend on to protect themselves or their family. Or it's a gun that they're hoping will win them a match, a DMR match, or a 2-gun match, 3-gun match. Getting it dialed in right and making sure everything's going to work for them they're paying for peace of mind. That this thing's not going to leak so much gas that it won't cycle when I go to the match. Now, don't get me wrong, I know some of you guys are saying, "Well, wouldn't they find that out during, practice and range time. Yes. But things get worse as they go on, right? So sometimes things are only a minor problem, and then that increases wear or it creates bigger problems. So that's a service you guys should definitely be offering. AR-15 assembling or inspections should definitely be offered as part of your services list. Now, I know a lot of people give, what's his name? I don't like not name dropping, but I don't like bringing other content creators up too much if I don't have to, because give me a second, guys. Gosh, what is his name? School of the American Rifle. That's what it is. School of the American Rifle. A lot of people give that guy a lot of crap because he gauges every single surface on an AR-15. I understand the smack talk to an extent, because it's kind of fuddy sometimes in some of the conversations that you hear. But the guy knows his stuff, and he breaks down on his autopsy videos. He's breaking down what went wrong with very high quality products that catastrophically failed, or failed in the line of duty, and they wanted to check and see why. Like that's a good service to offer, okay? Because it informs people, especially people watching the videos. Like, you don't realize that just because you don't like this content and he seems kind of fuddy to you, you don't realize what somebody else may be learning on the other end of that screen watching this thing. And what maybe companies are learning, that maybe not the companies whose product went bad, but other companies who are trying to avoid their product going bad. You don't realize that a lot of companies will go around and do research on like what's going wrong with other companies, because like we said, you can't know everything, and you don't know what you don't know. So if you think you've got a really, really good product, you want to do some research on other products that are similar or what issues other products had, this is a good way to do it. So I will give the School of the American Rifle credit where credit is due. He's doing something that not a lot of people do. He's also got tens of thousands of dollars in gauges that most people can't afford and can never find, because a lot of these gauges don't exist anymore. So, I'll give him credit. So if you're looking at something like that, if you're like, hey, I want to know everything about AR-15s that there is to know, I'd recommend checking out a lot of School of the American Rifle's videos, because some of it's really, really good content, despite the people slinging hate online and in Facebook groups. It is what it is. Another service I think you guys should offer, and this one is a little less super general, but it is definitely something that general gunsmiths should offer, because it's not that hard. Bedding rifles. I think every general gunsmith should be offering rifle bedding services. Why is that? Well, it does take a little bit of skill and a little bit of know-how to do it properly. But if you can do it properly, it's a job that has a time investment at the beginning, and then it happens in the background. So like a lot of other jobs that we may talk about in the future, bedding requires you to go in there, take everything out, maybe break up the surface depending on what kind of stock it is, lay your bedding, cover the metal in, or anything you don't want to stick, not just metal, in a release agent. Maybe you've had to do the pillars and you install those and bed those, blah, 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 blah. You do the bedding job. And then you have to let it sit for X amount of time, depending on which bedding compound you're using. So while that's sitting for maybe a day or two, you're working. You're doing other things while this job is sitting there setting up. And that's a good use of time. Okay? If you could have two bedding jobs going at the same time, and they're sitting, they have that surgical tubing wrapped around it for pressure. Maybe it's just a clamp. A lot of guys do the plastic clamps that you can just compress and squeeze and they lock. That works. Mark Novak uses the surgical tubing because you can wrap it, and it exerts an insane amount of pressure if it's wrapped tightly. So you can do this, do the initial time investment to get the bedding started and everything. Once it's started setting, you can set it up and ignore it while you go earn money on other jobs. These are the kind of jobs that make a lot of sense, especially for you to do maybe, if you want to, you can do it the last thing of the day. You can do it right before you close up shop, and now it's setting overnight. That's fine, but that's almost like wasted opportunity, because you could do it in the morning sometimes, depending on what your days are like. You could do it in the morning. And then for the rest of the day, you're earning money doing other jobs while this thing has already started setting up. And if it's a 24-hour set time, then the next day you come in, first thing in the morning, you crack that sucker out, scrape off all the old, all the excess bedding compound that has spilled over. You get that cleaned up. You check everything, make sure everything's still free-floated, do any cleanup you need to do, and then that job is basically done. And it was done in one morning, basically. And then overnight, during the day, it's setting, you're earning money, you go to bed, you're sleeping, you get up in the morning, you come back to work. That job is now done. There are a couple different jobs like that. Rust bluing is kind of like that. If you're doing the slow and steady process, you throw it in the cabinet and it's rusting while you're doing other jobs. There's a lot more time investment after you pull it out of the rust cabinet than the bedding compound jobs. But it's just one of those jobs where it's passively, if you think about it, it's passively earning you money while you're actively earning money. It's a good investment. And I would say the profit margin on that job is a little lower than pin and welds because Acroglass, you got to imagine it's not the cheapest thing in the world. It's often sold out, so a lot of guys buy the big, the high volume amount of it, like the bulk almost. And I honestly, it's hard to say how many bedding jobs you could get out of the big one because different bedding jobs require a different amount and different gunsmiths bed differently. I know a lot of gunsmiths that will only bed the recoil lug section and the tang and nothing in between and nothing forward of the recoil lug. I'm not sure if I completely agree or disagree with that. I see their reasoning. A, it saves Acroglass, and B, those are the two most important parts. But I'm a bit of a believer in bedding it from tang to the first inch or two of the barrel. I like that. It's a really good look when you pull that rifle out of the stock and you see that really perfect, just not mirror finish, but this just perfect layout of the action in the stock from tang all the way up to the first inch or two of the barrel past the recoil lug. It's a really good look. I think there is something to be said about aesthetically pleasing the customer, right? At the same time, is that wasted money? I can't say for sure. I don't know 100% if I could defend that with I couldn't die on the hill saying that my way is the right way. There are different Acroglass products. There are different ways of doing it. We all know pillar bedding's the best way, blah, 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 when it comes to 90% of stocks. But bedding jobs are a really good service. Now, you're going to do a lot less bedding jobs than you will pin and welds, at least in my area. I can't speak to every area. Maybe your area is full of long-range shooters who are building new guns every year. That's phenomenal. Lock that market in. Okay, those are your good money guys. Maybe you're in the low country of South Carolina competing with Mark Novak. Good luck. And you have a lot of the bird hunters, the low country bird hunters. Lawyers, real estate agents, old money guys. Those are your big shotgun guys. Maybe you want to specialize in that, right? So maybe you're not a general gunsmith. But if you're a general gunsmith who's just offering as many services as you possibly can to the people in your area, these are the jobs I would recommend really pushing and making sure you offer them. If you haven't done pin and welds yet, try it. What's funny enough is I think it's only funny to me because I just did a video reacting to IREC Veteran 8888. But he's got a really old video on his channel somewhere about pin and welds. Do that. I will be making a video soon on pin and welds, and I will get it out to you guys with all the information that I can break down the best as possible, right? And if you're like, well, I'll just wait for that video, that's fine. Make sure when you start offering this service, you do it right, because you are going to develop a reputation for your pin and welds, just like you develop a reputation for every other service you do. If you can get in good with the guys who are shooting classes and matches all the time, you're going to be their pin and weld guy. And that's what you want. You want to be the pin and weld guy, okay? And that's what I'm finally getting in my area, is I've finally become the pin and weld guy. And I love it. That's good. I'm always going to give my customers the best job I can offer. And just tell them, hey, and this is something you guys need to know. I know there's something about pride. Having pride is okay. But admitting when you mess up is better. Okay? So I want you to make sure your customer knows that you warranty your product or your service, and if there is an issue, to bring it back. Because if you slip up one day, you're having a bad day, and you forget to pay attention to a detail here, but the customer doesn't know that you're willing to fix any issue you have, they're just going to stop coming to you. They're going to say, he messed that up. That sucks. Time to find a new guy. And then that might start a bad reputation for you. I really think you need to be offering a warranty. Tell people, hey, if I mess up, tell me. Bring it back to me. I'll make it right. Because people like that. People like to know that their guy is going to take care of them no matter what. And B, it's the right thing to do. Ethically and morally, it is the right thing to do, to where if you're performing a service and the customer is wildly unhappy because you made a mistake, admit you made a mistake and make it right. It's just the right thing to do, okay? That might be a service in its own that you should offer, a warranty, okay? I think that's all I've got. I think that's the last of the services that I think, we could go on forever. You could do a top 20 list, but that's not what we're doing here. I'm just saying these are some services to wrap your head around. The cleanings, because they're relatively easy, and they will help you pay the bills because of the volume of the cleanings that you're going to get into your shop. The pin and welds, because they have a high profit margin and can get you in with certain people that you want to perform services for, because they're going to keep coming back. They're often return customers, and you want return customers. And these guys go to classes here. They all chit chat. They all talk, right? Be their guy. It's a good look, and it helps you. And you get to develop this relationship with a lot of good shooters out there. I'd recommend, if you're interested in that world, do their pin and welds. And that also applies to doing the AR assemblies and the inspections. Being the guy who they can trust to make sure the rifle's going to run properly, or that you can help figure out what's going wrong with their AR-15, because everyone thinks that, you can always diagnose an AR-15. Dude, I have seen AR-15s where the only reason they would not run is because the upper and lower did not like each other. Their tolerances were just not enough, or not right. Everything in the upper was in spec enough to work. Everything from front to back of the upper was good enough to work. In fact, you put it on another lower receiver that's not its own lower receiver, and it works just fine. It works like a champ. And then you put that lower that was with the gun that it wouldn't work together on somebody else's upper, and the gun works without any hiccups at all. But you put them back together and they have issues, right? Being able to pinpoint someone's problem and tell them, this is what you need to fix or change out, this is what I recommend, it's going to help. And then when they go out and go to the range and they see the results, boom, that's the position you want to be in. I really want to say thank you for coming out and listening to the podcast, or watching. If you're on YouTube, hello, I see you. Thank you so much for coming. The YouTube channel is coming along, so I highly recommend, if you're listening now and you made it to the end of the podcast episode, really good for you. Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. But B, go check out the YouTube channel, because we got more videos coming, and we're finally putting videos out like I told you we would. It's happening. It's real. It's been 2 years in the making, but it's finally happening. So go check that out. The podcast, and every episode I ever do of any video or podcast episode, always goes to Rumble. So make sure you go check out Rumble too. If you're anti-YouTube, that's fine. I don't blame you. I am too, but unfortunately, Rumble isn't there yet. So the way to do that is to go check it out and go to Rumble. And if you really want to stick it to YouTube, go watch it on Rumble. Doesn't help me at all. I'm not monetized on either one of them. So this is not like a sellout thing. You're not helping me. It's helping you. It's helping you. Maybe you're sticking it to YouTube, going to Rumble. I get it. I try to watch a lot of my stuff on Rumble, but I'll be honest with you, Rumble's not where it needs to be yet. Their UI, their user interface is not there yet. It's very wonky, especially the mobile app. So until that's figured out, I have to use YouTube. But also make sure you go check out the Instagrams, and the Facebook, because we're old fuddy-duddy out here. The Facebook, the YouTube, and the Instagram at TBR Gunworks. I really appreciate y'all watching or listening today. Remember that every gun law is an infringement, and the ATF sucks. Until next time.